On the next episode of the My Story podcast, I am joined by the current Formula E Championship leader Antonio Felix da Costa. He's had an incredible career in motorsport with so many interesting stories. After doing very well in karting, he progressed through the ranks quickly, Formula Renault, Formula 3, then to iconic moments in GP3. He came super close to racing in Formula 1 with Toro Rosso, but unfortunately at that time that dream did not come true. However, he'd go on to be a professional racing driver with BMW and also race in Formula E since the very beginning. As mentioned, he currently leads the championship we're living in right now, and we're looking forward to getting that going as soon as possible. Some really interesting stories in this one. Antonio really opens up about his time with Red Bull and how they really progressed his career and how thankful he is of them and what they've done for him. And also the time since, where he's been racing in Formula E and is now going for the World Championship. So once again, thank you to Antonio for his time. Some incredible stories in here, and I hope you enjoy. So Antonio, you're currently leading the Formula E Championships in these very strange times. How have you been coping and dealing with this right in the middle of a championship season, as of course it's not quite what we'd normally have at the start of any year?
Yeah, it's weird. There's obviously a few positives and a few negatives about all this. We were like in a bit of a hot streak with a lot of good results coming in. 3 podiums in a row in Formula E, 3 podiums in a row in WEC as well, and I was feeling good. I was healthy. I was fit. And then this whole thing happened, and obviously we are forced to put our seasons on hold. But on the other hand, this is a much bigger problem than our sport, than myself, than motorsport or any other sport. So in the end, we have to do what's right. Come home, stay home, make sure this whole thing goes away quick. But at the same time, yeah, it's been very weird, very different to any off season I've had, because even being at home, you have some restrictions with what you can and cannot do. So, yeah.
Before we jump back to the start of your career, I'd like to mention eSports, because you've been doing a lot of that recently as well. I guess we're all wanting to watch racing still, and you want to keep active, but what's sort of led you to go down this route of just doing it every single day, streaming it, and just having fun, I guess?
Yeah, mainly that, just having fun, and it's a great way to keep yourself competitive. I don't think it makes you better as a driver, but at least you keep wanting to get better at something, and it's something that I'm lucky to be related with my sport, which is obviously sim racing, and I have a decent simulator at home, and it's been really fun to see the progression. Like 4 weeks ago, or whatever, when I got my head stuck into it, I was quite slow and far off guys like Lando or Max Verstappen or Juncadella. Like these three guys are super fast, or Kelvin van der Linde, and yeah, lately I've been able to come a lot closer and actually start having some serious fun with it, and the progression has been something cool. It's something that I don't do it every day, all day long. I don't do it all day long, but at least it's something like, okay, when I sit in my sim, there's a goal. It's not just having fun, but there's a small goal, and then there's a small feeling of accomplishment and stuff. So it's been cool.
Awesome. I mean, it's been great to watch them as a fan, so thank you for putting on those shows. I'd like to go back to the start of this and how you got into karting, because, I don't know, maybe I don't read it the right way, but I assume in Portugal there aren't too many Portuguese motor racing idols to look up to.
There's a few, obviously. Formula 1 is a big sport here. Obviously, football is the biggest, and we've always had some Portuguese football players to put ourselves on the map. Even before Ronaldo, we've had Figo, and so it's always been a big sport here in Portugal. But so is Formula 1. Especially back in the day, we had Pedro Lamy in there. Before him, we had Pedro Chaves, then we had Tiago Monteiro. And it was a big religious thing on Sundays, to switch on the TV and watch F1. So it's always been a little bit present on our minds. And then I was lucky that I had two brothers that were doing a little bit of go-karting, and I got naturally caught up in the situation, and I tried it once for the first time, and I loved it.
So was there a reason you wanted to start doing it competitively rather than just doing it for fun? Because I guess that's the breaking point, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the question I get the most. But to be honest, I never not wanted to do it competitively, you know.
Ah, okay.
And the thing is, like, I started so young. I did my first race when I was 8, and that was
Wow.
so much fun straight away that it was always okay. This is my main thing now. My main thing is not to go to school or whatever. I was going to school obviously, but I was in school thinking about next weekend's race or whatever. So school was something I had to do, and go karting was something I wanted to do. So yeah, it just came naturally.
Mm. And was this, once you were winning championships and so on, did your family realise this was going to get quite serious quite quickly?
Yeah, I think once they realized like I had some potential, I had the full support of everyone. You know, the hardest ones to convince was also always my mom and my grandmother. But at the same time, when they understood that we could do something good, they pushed forward. So I've never had any resistance, and that's where I think I've been really really lucky. Obviously, been lucky to having had the funds and having had the support from sponsors early on and all that. But also, I think the most important thing, and I've seen a lot of careers ending very early on, like if you don't do well at school or whatever, then your parents stop you. So I've been really lucky to have the support from. I mean, I've never done bad at school. I've never been the best in class, but I've never done bad. But I've always been lucky that I had a family behind me, pushing me to go on.
And I guess the point where you start racing karts in Europe, it gets quite expensive quite quickly. How did you and your family deal with that? Because I've read that it wasn't always so easy for you early on.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. We race in a very expensive sport. We race
Hmm.
the things we do, and it's been getting worse through the years, and it's all about supply and demand. And we've been getting a lot of drivers coming in with big budgets and stuff like that. So obviously, it's like the real estate market. The more people you have wanting to buy, obviously the prices are going to go up. So we've gone through a little bit of that, and drivers buying teams and this and that. So what used to cost 1,000 now costs 3,500. So it's a little bit out of range. I was lucky that in my days was still not insanely crazy.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I was able to, like I said, have some local sponsors early on. We had a really big one of the big phone companies from Portugal supporting me early on. So I've been lucky with that. And then obviously when it really started to get expensive with like Formula Threes and stuff and GP3s, then I had Red Bull coming along, and
Hmm.
they basically made my career because okay, they denied me a late chance of getting to F1 when I thought it was pretty much done, but at the same time they paid for a lot of my junior racing, and they put me in DTM as well, and they
Hmm.
connected me to BMW, which then from then on, then I was able to have a professional.
I found it quite interesting when looking at your karting results. A lot of the people you raced against, some of them you're racing against still today. How strange is that to think that maybe 20 years later you're racing against the same people?
It's cool. It's actually a lot of fun, like guys like Robin Franz, Will Stevens,
Mm.
Charles Peak. It's been fun watching them also progress through their careers, and some got to F1, some don't, some are still racing me. So yeah, it's been cool, and like I have a really good relationship with a few of them, like Juncadella. I've raced Danny Juncadella for years. I raced him in DTM later on, and we're good friends. And yeah, so it's been. I mean, I get some of these guys. I get really really happy when I see something good happening for them.
It seems like around 2008 it all started to go quite quickly. You started racing in multiple Formula Renault championships, I think second in one of your first championships. You're still very young at this point. How are you dealing with this mentally? Because I guess so much is going on.
Yeah, I think at that point we then started to okay, it switches from being just fun to like it's okay, it's a little bit of work. We now need to start looking into options of how am I gonna get into Formula One, So
Mm.
obviously getting the results is number one priority always. But I was always lucky to be racing in good teams. So I raced for Motorpark in Formula Renault. They were one of the best. There was a couple of other really good teams, but we were able to fight. And as you said, then my second year I won the Northern European Championship, and I finished third on the Euro Cup, tied on points with Jeff. Uh, so yeah, and then a couple of years later, Red Bull picked me up, and from the day Red Bull signed me, like 4 months later, I had driven three of their three world title winning cars. So things went so fast, and I've gone from I'm not sure what's going to happen to I'm very close to an F1 seat. So I think it's all about never giving up and having the right people around you. That's not in the good moments, that's easy, but especially in the bad moments that we all have them, having the right people around you to bring you back up.
So something that's quite interesting is you drove that Formula Renault 2.0 car. You can now drive that in iRacing. I mean, how weird is that? Obviously, going back to that now and driving it in your free time, but also how similar is it? I know there's a lot of the feel missing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fuel missing, and iRacing. It's, I think, in my opinion, one of the best games out there. We can almost call it a simulator.
Mm.
The F1 game, it's a game, and the Gran Turismo, these are games, but this one's almost like a simulator because there's a lot of things you can do. A few things are very close to reality, but also on the same time, it's still a game. At the end, at heart,
Mm.
it's still a game. And a lot of these cars are dictated by their setups, and it's crazy how different you can make them feel with a few setup changes. And you can have a car that allows you to drive a certain way or a different way, or it wants this or that. So at the end of the day, every car you drive, or most of them, they're like just different speeds basically, of what speeds you can carry through the corners. But and then it's what you do with a setup that dictates how well they turn and this and that. So
Mm.
there's a factor to it, but it's more like the sound, the looks of things and stuff. They are so well made that in the end, kind of brings you back to those memories.
And just staying on sort of games for a second here, why do you feel that some drivers adapt really quickly and some really struggle when they go to iRacing or R Factor?
Honestly, I don't know. A lot
Mm.
of it is down to material. If you have a good steering wheel and good hardware, it really helps you. Because I came from like decent or bad hardware to now I have now upgraded in the last couple of weeks, and it's found me a lot of lap time and consistency. Like I got the really good Fanatec stuff, and I've gained so much lap time. It's crazy. So even in sim racing, what do you have as equipment, it still makes a difference. It's not only in real life. Well, so yeah, it's been it's just weird, but and then it's the most than anything is just laps and laps and laps and
Mm.
laps, and spin and crash, and do that 100 times and 100 times more, and then you'll start to be able to be quick without crashing.
If we jump back to the early part of your Formula Renault career, in 2009 you won the NEC Championship, but you were third in the main series. I saw you were disqualified in two races in the Nürburgring. I don't know if there's any story behind this, but is that kind of annoying? Because without that, you would have been champion, most likely.
Yeah, so that weekend I qualified on pole
Mm.
for both races, and I finished first and second on the two races. And at the end of the second race, they found something that they were not happy with on our brake calipers, where the oil goes. Which
Okay.
in the end, yes, it was not legal, I have to say, by the book. But in the end, it was not bringing any performance, but it was just a way for the team to save money, basically. So we appealed it, and we lost the appeal. So yeah, because we appealed, and I did both races, and on that weekend I basically lost like 40 points or something like that, and I ended up losing the championship by 10. So and then we went to the last weekend of the year in Motorland, and I did double pole and double win again, with the car exactly how they wanted. And racing against Albert Costa, John Eric, Magnussen, these guys. And so yeah, that was really disappointing, with the team as well. We have big budgets, and there's a lot of money being spent, and then to try and save a couple of €100 here or there for a stupid thing, we
Mm.
lost a big championship. And at that time also, there was €500,000 prize money for you to do the step to 3.5,
Mm.
which I only went to 3.5 2 years after that. So it kind of delayed my whole process for 1 or 2 years. I mean, I gained other things from it, race to F3 and this and that. But yeah, it was frustrating at the time. But to be honest, I don't think it was. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe had
Yeah.
I gone straight to 3.5, I would not have been maybe strong enough or whatever, and it could have been an early end to my career as well. So it's just how it was.
I'd like to briefly touch on F3 if that's all right, because you did some racing in that in 2010. Like I looked at the entry list and there's people driving all different chassis. Was it a bit of a whoever has the most money wins sort of situation there?
No, I don't think it was that much. I think out of
Mm.
20 cars, 2 cars were a different chassis.
Mm.
If I'm not mistaken. Most of us were Dallara, and then there was 2 Russian chassis or whatever. I barely
Ah,
remember
okay.
that, to be honest. But yeah, that was a year where probably FIA F3 was the weakest in terms of car entries. We had like 18 or 20 fixed, but
Mm.
we looked at it. It was like Valtteri Bottas, Mortara, Juncadella, Mary, uh, whatever, like Tambe, myself, a lot of these guys, and even Kevin Magnussen came for a round. So yeah, I mean, we still winning at one of those rounds. We had Whitman, Vantour, so even winning one of those rounds, it was so hard.
Mm.
I ended up winning 3 races that year, and I won Rookie of the Year. So yeah, it was still a fun season. I learned a lot actually. I developed my driving skills massively that season, and yeah, so it was a fun year.
I was going to say, because this led on to driving the Force India car, I think, at the end of the year.
Obviously, I have Tiago Monteiro as my manager since that year.
Mm.
And Tiago raced for Jordan for a few years,
Mm.
and they are now for India. Well, now they're Racing Point. But yeah, he had some leftover contacts there, and he always kept good contact. And it was the first year that the rookie test had to happen. It was the first year they had to run rookie
Mm.
drivers, and we linked it all up, and I'm so glad it worked out. And to be honest, I'm so glad I raced F3 that year because the driving style between the F3 and that Force India F1 car was exactly the same.
Wow.
Uh, had I not raced F3, I probably would have struggled to be quick in that F1 car.
Then the year after, you make the switch to GP3, which at the time there were two different series, quite similar in some ways. But what made you make that switch instead of staying in FIA F3?
I think the year before that it was the first ever year of GP3, and I didn't want to go there. I didn't know
Mm.
what it could be, what it was going to be, and then obviously we quickly saw that it was a big series and following the F1 weekend. So we decided to make the switch. Unfortunately, we made a wrong call on the team. In my opinion, we were super close to race for the Campos, the Adax Campos team, which was owned by Alejandro Agag and Alberto Longo, which now own Formula E. And we were so close to signing with them. I had a test with them. I was quickest. It was all perfect. And in the end, we had a really good deal from the status team. They had links to an F1 team as well.
Mhm.
I got promised a million things, and so we decided to go. But for me, it was the wrong call. We did not have the right staff around my car that year, and I really struggled. It was probably one of the hardest seasons of my whole life.
Mm.
And that's when I really thought to myself, like, damn it, I think that's it. I think I'm not gonna go to F1 anymore. And then the savior of my career, the real savior of my career, came at the end of that season, Trevor Carlin, and he said, mate, look, I had a really bad season in GP3 as well. I want you to race for me. So he offered me an amazing deal, like super cheaper than go karts,
Wow.
and yeah. And 2 races in, I was a full-on Red Bull driver. I had driven F1 cars and this and that. So, Trevor really helped me out there. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great story. I was going to say 2011 was a dip, but 2012 in a lot of ways was, the projection into where you are today. You drove for Formula Renault 3.5 in that first, well, parts of that year as well. I found that crazy. I mean, watching that season, the fact that you didn't do but half the rounds, but the fact you went into the last 2 rounds, could still win the championship, it kind of blew my mind. How did you find that adaptation?
I surprised myself with that one, even to be honest, because I knew I was quick, and I know I'm quick, but I was racing guys like Jules Bianchi, Sam Bird, Robin Freins, Magnussen, Will Stevens, Nico Muller, and all these guys had the preseason. They were well acquainted with their teams and all that. And I basically landed on a parachute with Arden. I wasn't wanted there, to be honest, initially, because obviously I replaced Lewis Williamson. And they loved Lewis. I
Mm.
I don't know what happened between Lewis and Red Bull, but I had to. I got put myself there, and I was young, and I could see like I was not really wanted there. And after my first ever qualifying in Nürburgring, I gave the team one of their best qualifyings of the year. And how it all changed from there, it was amazing. So, I had Gary Horner, the obviously Christian
Mm.
Horner's dad, which was there all the time. He was really against me in the beginning, and then after that first qualifying, I was his little boy, and he really defended me and pushed for me, and things turned around very, very quickly, and I ended up winning the most races that year, against all of those guys, and I finished fourth in the championship, and I won the last two races again in Barcelona. Once again, one race against Jules and Sam, and the other race, I won with the biggest lead ever in World Series. So that was an amazing end.
And you also were doing GP3, as you said earlier on, with Carlin that year. I think you're the first driver ever in GP3 to win two races in the same weekend, maybe the only ever. How did that happen?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'm still the only ever. Yeah, so I qualified second or third in Budapest, and then I had a good start, and I took the lead, and I won the race one, fairly simple. And then race two, you have the top 8 reverse grid. I started 8th. We were on wet tires, but the track was drying out. And I told my team, okay, because a few guys started on slicks, I said, okay, as soon as the guys on slicks are like 6 seconds off, you tell me. Yeah, so that's what they did. I was just driving around in 7th, and I boxed. I was the first car to box. I went last, and then I started overtaking people, and this and that, and I overtook to the lead with like 3 laps to go. And yeah, that was amazing. And then the day after that, I flew to England, and I drove the F1 car. I think at the time was the RB7, if I'm not, the double diffuser one or the blown exhaust one, I'm not sure. And yeah, so it's like with Red Bull, it's like that, when you're doing well and things are working out, you just everything happens so quick.
You've got some great videos on your YouTube channel, actually driving some of the older Red Bull F1 cars. I definitely advise people go and check those out. Just to finish on that GP3 season, you went into the final race of the season. Daniel Abt and Mitch Evans, who you're still racing today, you're going into that championship as, any of you could win it, basically. Did you have to change anything mentally going into that last race?
No, I mean, I was pretty calm, and Daniel Abt was in the area to win the championship as well. Mitch, myself, and I think Vanio, if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, so and race one, Mitch is out in turn 1, and I'm second in the race, and then I'm like fighting with Vanio, but I didn't need to, so I just started bump drafting him down the straight, which I think there was no one else did that up to that point as well. And so now I just wanted to finish third. That was good enough for me. I would have been championship leader after that round, and then the day after, I basically just had to finish the race. And a couple of laps into the race, my car got stuck in 6th gear. So I couldn't downshift. It wouldn't do anything. So I had to power cycle the car in the middle of the straight in Monza, and that killed me. So I ended up losing the championship that day. That one was hard to swallow. Yeah.
I think as a fan, personally, I think you deserve to win that title, especially with the performance in Monza. I know GP3 is a bit random sometimes, but I think it was definitely you three, and I think you on top.
Yeah, I didn't lose the championship that day. I didn't lose it that day. More the Hockenheim round where I boxed for wet tires on the formation lap, which was the right call. I was starting second or third, and I boxed. And I was coming through the field. I was probably gonna starting from the pit lane. I was gonna, because I was on the right tire, I was gonna finish in the top 5, and I crashed overtaking a super slow, like such a stupid crash. Really, really stupid, and then the day after I had to start last because I finished last, and I crashed again in turn 1. So that weekend I had 0 points, and that's where I lost the championship for sure.
Can we speak about that legendary bump draft now? I mean, I think when I think of GP3, that's the first thing that pops into my head, really. What gave you the idea to do that, and did you think about what could go wrong if it didn't go right?
I had a small think about before jumping into the car, because as we were on pre-grid on Parc Fermé, I kind of pushed my car with my hand against the car ahead and my teammate just to see where my nose would hit it. And I said, oh, you know what, this is actually doable. And, but I never really thought about it. And then, me and Vanio were overtaking each other and losing a little bit of time to Abt that was leading the race. And then at one point I just said, you know what, I'll stop fighting this guy and start pushing him forwards. And it worked out. It worked out really, really well. So, yeah. And he understood straight away what I was doing. So, yeah.
It was a legendary moment. Thank you for doing it. It was great memories. That year as well, you did Formula 3 at Macau, I think for maybe the 3rd time, but you won it this time with Red Bull backing. How special is that? Because you look at the 2012 season, it's just so many great results.
Yeah, Yeah, that was a special year for sure. But yeah, that day I got the call to go to Macau with actually Volkswagen. They could put a full on entry,
Hmm.
and that's they picked me to do that, even though I hadn't driven an F3 for 2 years. And yeah, so I did a test. I went to Macau, and I won it. I put it on pole. I won both races, and I won the Grand Prix, the final, and that was amazing. My car had like this dragon livery on, which was like the dragon ear in China, and helmet was well angry at the end of that, because why isn't he on a Red Bull car? It's like, because you didn't pay for this one. So and but yeah, at the same, I mean, well, angry. He was very happy, and we had a really good talk at the end of that day. And that's when I thought like F1 was really in the horizon now, because he said some important things to me that day, and yeah, we had a really good relationship going on at the time. I still do. But yeah, that win in Macau was definitely the cherry on top of the cake that year.
I guess you can't get into too much detail with it, but around that end of 2012, around 2013, how much talk was there? You know, could you go to Toro Rosso as a race driver? I guess they got two drivers at the time, so it would be quite tough.
Unfortunately, I was just in the wrong time at the wrong place,
Mm,
the wrong time that year. Because Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber were not moving.
mm.
Ricardo and Jeff had another year in Toro Rosso as well, so I just had nowhere to go. And yeah, I couldn't do anything, so I had to do another year in World Series. But it was all right. We still had a decent year. We still won three or four races. I finished third in the championship against Magnussen, against Van Dorn too.
Mm.
Eventually, we did go to F1. So obviously it wasn't. Everyone was expecting a bit more, even myself. I admit it, but it's not like we had a disaster of a season. But yeah.
I remember the end of that year. Some stories coming up that were you and Danny roommates at the time? So was it kind of a bit awkward waiting for the call to see what was happening?
Yeah, no, me and Danny were roommates in Milton Keynes. He was racing GP3 that year. He actually won it. He won the championship, and yeah, and then we were roommates in. But it was obviously a bit awkward, but never hate or anything.
Mm.
No regrets, no hard feelings. He was just looking out for himself, his career, and probably in his position, I would have taken it as well. So no blames on him or whatever. We have to look after each other, or like after ourselves first, and in this sport. So it's yeah, that's how it is.
Obviously, it is the dream to get to Formula One, but at the same time, you went down the route of becoming a professional racing driver the year after, didn't you? Or the years after with BMW and Red Bull and DTM. Did that kind of help cushion the blow of not getting that ultimate dream, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that blow is never gonna go away. And
Mm,
I don't say this with frustration or I can't sleep at night or whatever. No, I
mm.
live really, really well with it. No worries at all. Um, but yeah, it did. My main goal was always to become a professional racing driver and being able to live from what I love to do. So I've accomplished that, and I'm so grateful. For that's why I'm grateful to Red Bull. Because they were the ones who gave me this chance, and then obviously BMW. They have been so kind to me for so many years, and yeah, so I'm able to be a professional race car driver today because of some key people in my life, and manufacturers and branding, and yeah.
Around this sort of time as well, Formula E is becoming a thing. I guess in its very early stages, everyone was looking at it, wondering what's going to happen here. Is it going to happen for 1 or 2 seasons? But you were in there straight away. You got yourself in a pretty good team, remember correctly, for the first couple of years at least. How did you sort of make that move? Was it the BMW connections again?
No, not at all. I had a call from a Portuguese engineer that was with Tibaguri at the time, and he kind of put my name down, and they went with it, and I went for a test, and we signed the contract that day. And yeah, at that time, I was, like I said, I was a bit frustrated because I thought I was gonna be in F1 by then, and then I had to be racing electric cars, which I'm not gonna lie, at the time was not what I wanted to be doing. And I also wanted to quit after fairly early on, just because I wasn't enjoying, or I don't know. I felt like I was just in a bad place with my head, to be honest. And then as I told BMWs, no guys, I think I'm gonna stop from Lee, and they were like, no, 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 don't you do it. We want to come in eventually. I don't know if in 3, 4, or 5 years, but stay there, stay there. So I did stay there, and it was probably the best thing I've ever decided to do in my life, because I love Formula E. What it has become in only 4 years or 5 years, it's incredible. The amount of manufacturers and good drivers that we have there, it's unbelievable. And I think it's peaking. It's still going up, and we don't know what the limit of that could be, but it's the growth of that is huge, and I'm so grateful that I'm there.
I think the first season or two went quite well. I remember you got a victory quite early on. Then there seemed to be a couple of years of just struggle. Was it? I guess BMW were coming in at the time. I guess there was the eventual goal that they would be good. But how tough was it to sort of just believe them in that instance? Because it must have been quite frustrating.
Yeah, that was a tricky couple of years. As you said, that was the link. I went to Andretti because BMW were gonna partner with them in season 5, but they wanted me there from season 3 onwards. But basically, it was a waiting game for me, because BMW weren't putting any money, Andretti wasn't putting any money, so we were all just waiting for season 5. And obviously, when you're racing at this level, if you're not investing, if you're not developing, if you're not trying to get better, you just get eaten alive. And I was teammates with Robin, and we all know how good he is. And me and him were sometimes qualifying 18th and 17th or whatever, and being lapped. So that was very, very painful. And it's not easy, because even though you have, I was well protected contractually and all that, but I'm not gonna lie. People try to get rid of me, and it then starts to, you have to spin some heads. And I saw a lot of my teammates being cut off, and it hurt seeing that, because all of the teammates I had through those years, all of them were capable of winning races, and they got fired eventually or replaced. And for me, it was just a big mistake, and maybe things or people that had to suffer consequences that never did, and they blamed it on drivers.
Mm-hmm. Well, thankfully, I guess for you, around that sort of time, you started doing some stuff in Brazil, some GT racing. You went back to Macau in an F3 car after a few more years of not driving one, and go and win it again. To win it once must be quite special, but I guess twice is quite extraordinary.
Yeah, so I went into that weekend knowing that only Mortara and Mortara and Rosenquist had won it twice, and I was obviously had the chance to do it again that weekend. And Juncadella was there, Rosenquist was there, and I, that wasn't the main goal going in, because as you said, I hadn't driven an F3 for a few years. But after the first free practice, I told Tiago, I went to dinner with Tiago. I said, you know what, man, I think I can win this. And we did win it. It was amazing. And that was the first year that it was called a World Cup as well. So I was the first Macau World Cup winner ever. And that was such a special moment, because, as you said, I was coming from a couple of bad Formula E seasons. DTM, I was able to win a race or two here and there, but never really be consistently fast. So I didn't have mine. I wasn't feeling pretty happy about my performances and what I could show people. And to go there that year and race against Lando Norris, George Russell, whatever, so many of these guys that are now in F1 or about to get to F1, win it. It was amazing.
I'd like to quickly touch on DTM if I may. It seems like a great series, one that sometimes is quite tough to overtake in, and a lot of people say it's similar to a Formula 3 car. Is that a load of rubbish, or how can you equate it in terms of maybe single seaters?
I think in a little bit of in terms of pace, yes, and a few of the basics where, like, the ratio between power and grip is quite similar. But it's also very, very different. We have power steering. You're sitting a bit more high up the road. Um, you can hit people. So there's a few that are different. So I adapted myself really, really well to that championship and that car very early on. I had some really good qualifyings and some decent races, and then I kind of went through a rough patch as well. But we've seen it with everyone in DTM. We've seen Gary Paffett winning championships and then flying last, maybe. Same with Matthias Ekstrom or Mortara or whoever it is. So, it's just hard for it. It really taught me a lot to, like, okay, I was last today, but I can actually win tomorrow. So it really taught me to kind of reset my mind and forget what happened yesterday and reset for the day after. And it made me a better driver.
I'd like to quickly just jump back to last year's Formula E. You finished 6th place your last year with BMW Andretti. You won a race, it was all looking quite good. I guess there was a big decision to be made at some point this year, or last year. When did that idea to move come, or was it just, chance maybe?
It didn't come from me. So it came, I had a deal to do another year. So my contract was still running for this season. And I got a call from Jeff. The first call I had was from Jeff saying, man, I think Andre's gonna go. I don't want him to go. He was super honest. But if he is going, then I want you to take his place. And I said, dude, I can't. I have another contract. I have another year in my contract. I said, no, maybe we can do it, this and that. So, and then it all happens for a reason, I guess. And then it was around the time that I was doing Le Mans with BMW, and then we had the race in Switzerland with Formula E as well, and we had two terrible weekends back to back. And at that time, I was like, okay, I'm leaving, I want to leave. But then I calmed myself down. I was like, okay, let's think this through properly. In life, we can never take decisions when you're very angry. And that's what I did. And I weighed all the pros and cons, and I decided to do the swap. And I think it was a really bold move, going into a French team with a French teammate. He's double champion, but at the same time, it's the team that I initially started my Formula E career with. They were Team Aguri, so I know a lot of people that are there, and I was sure they were gonna look out for me as well. And that's what's been happening. No one's being favored or whatever, and we've had amazing races, and it looks like I did the right call. I'm leading the championship right now. Obviously, the BMWs look very, very quick, but they were very quick last year as well. And I think where this team has the upper hand is on some other parts of the key factors of performance that will help us to be successful on the long term. So
I was going to say, when BMW started really strong, were you worried in any way? Was there any doubt that, oh, geez?
Worried at all, not at all. A lot of people around me were like, oh, what have you done? You did the wrong choice, this and that. But I'm strong enough now, and I'm mature enough to listen to what I want to listen to and shut down those voices. And I don't have to say any. It's my career, it's my life. I decide what I want to do with it, and I was at peace with my decision. And that's one thing I always told myself, is like, whatever happens, I'm never going to regret it. And I told everyone, like, maybe we're gonna look back in a year and say what a stupid move this was, but at least we know about it. And so yeah, so I was always gonna be okay with it. And as you said, they started super strong. They were on pole for the first 3 rounds of the season, but we weren't. But I knew where our performance was, and there was a lot still to unblock with the new team, with the ST Cheetah, and we did that coming into Marrakesh when we were on pole and won the race. So yeah, and I think we're still on the uphill, on the rise, and yeah. So I think I'm very confident with what the choice I took, and with where we are as a team.
Quick side note, because you've started doing some racing in the LMP2 categories as well. Is that hard to adapt because you're so busy right now? Because you're going Formula E, LMP. It must be quite mad.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved driving a lot of cars in a single season. There was a time there where I was an F1 simulator and reserve driver, racing DTM, racing Formula E, went to Brazil, doing some GT. So I think I was racing like 6 different cars in a season, F3. And yeah, so now doing LMP2 and Formula E at the same time. I do a couple of GT races here and there if I have to, but it made me better as a driver. It made me very quick to adapt to different situations or cars. Yeah, it's a super fun car to drive. I love the WEC. I love the championship. I love endurance racing these days, and I'm lucky to be in a really good team with super cool teammates, and we have a lot of fun.
So I've only got a couple more questions. First of which is, we're in a very weird situation right now. You are the Formula E Championship leader, but we don't know how many races we'll have left. And yeah, but how do you attack that? Because I mean, it could end now. I guess maybe you have more insight than I do, but do you just go day by day and just prepare as you normally would?
Day by day, we keep contact with the team. We have a few meetings once or twice a week. Everyone keeps in contact. I know the whole group is pushing super hard, as they would. So yeah, but at the same time, I've been using this time to really switch off, relax, spend time with my family and friends. staying fit, staying healthy. And I just want to make sure that when we do get the call to go back, that everyone is up to speed, up and running, and we can pick up right where we left off in terms of performance, and stay strong and stay at the front.
Lastly, I want to just speak about, I know it's, ifs and maybes, but if you become Formula E World Champion, does that mean anything? Does that mean more than pretty much any other title in the world, maybe barring Formula One?
So if the championship, if we don't do any more races, I won't be considered champion. I think the championship needs one more race for it to name a champion. But regardless of that, if we do a few more races and I end up winning that championship, then it wouldn't compare to anything. But it's just I set myself goals, and that's the goal I have right now, or for the last couple of years that's been the goal. I've now worked myself to be in the position to fighting for a championship, if it's not meant to be this year, we'll try it again next year. But that is my long life career goal since a few years now, and I'm hoping to achieve it. Obviously, it'll make me very happy, but it's going to be fun to see what happens then, because I need to find the will and the to do it again the year after, and I think I will, because I love breaking records and I love doing this. So Jeff is now the only two-time champion, so I'd love to break that record.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. Some great stories in there. Hopefully you'll become Formula E champion as well as LMP2 champion as well. So, yeah, thank you for your time, Antonio. Cheers.
See you later, mate. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is the Antonio Felix da Costa My Story podcast. Now, I tried to not let it show too much in the video, but I've been a big fan of Antonio for a long time. As mentioned in the GP3 times when he first got into the sport, I really enjoyed watching his style of driving, and it made me become a big fan of his. So thanks again for his time. It was really, really interesting to hear all the stories and know the little details that I didn't know about his career, even though I've obviously been following it now for probably nearly 10 years. Antonio is obviously going for the Formula E World Championship this year. It's super close at the top, and we don't know how many rounds we're going to have to go. Of course, he's also up there in the World Endurance Championship standing as well in the LMP2 class, so he could be going for 2 championships this year once we get racing once again. Of course, the main thing is we're all staying safe until that time does come, and hopefully you enjoy this content in the meantime. And thank you to all of the new subscribers that have tuned in recently. It's really nice to see. It's been a nice little sort of spike in my channel, so massive thanks to everyone that has sort of subscribed recently and is enjoying the content. Nonetheless, stay safe. Nonetheless, stay safe guys, and I'll see you again soon for another video. Goodbye.